Hello and welcome back again. I'm Candace.
And I'm Shel.
And welcome back to our Closing the Early Literacy Gap podcast.
Yes, this podcast is for anyone who has anything to do with small children or even anybody who's in the early stages of learning literacy or learning how to read.
Yep.
So
parents, teachers, administration,
people who train teachers, coaches, anybody. On episode 7.
Already.
Episode 7.
This is so fun.
We're going to be focusing on phonemic awareness in this episode, which is an important thing for young kids.
Yeah.
Right. In the early phases of learning. It's kind of a hidden thing, as we talked about.
Yes.
Because it's something people don't really know a lot about. I do want to say, before we even get started on talking about phonemic awareness, and that is that, remember that this is a long game, right?
Yep.
Even the steps you take in the early years of teaching set the groundwork for years to come.
Yep.
And sometimes we want immediate results. So we try something and we think, oh, now they should be able to be reading, right? But there's so many factors and so many things. And all these little steps that we're talking about are just important building blocks. And some kids are going to get it faster than other kids.
Right. And I think it's really important too as parents to realize if you're feeling frustrated that they're not catching on as quickly, imagine how they feel.
That's
so
a good point.
You have to be that good support for them so they know like, okay, like I can get this and it's okay. So don't get discouraged and definitely don't show any disappointment if they're not getting it as fast as you want.
Yeah, I think that's really big. I think sometimes we take for granted some of the stuff like sounds and letters.
Yeah.
We take for granted that that's just common knowledge. And when
Right.
our kids don't know it, sometimes adults tend to get frustrated with a kid because they don't know something, or there's a hidden reason why the kid doesn't understand the information that we give them, something that they're missing. And so hopefully we can touch on some of those things and just don't get discouraged. Just keep on keeping on.
Yep. And keep it positive.
And keep it on. Very good.
So you mentioned that we're going to be focusing on phonemic awareness.
Yes.
And I didn't even know this term existed up
didn't
until a couple years ago. And, you know, being in the education system, especially for younger kids for the past 11 years and not knowing this term is really alarming to me.
It really is because, well, we did talk a little bit about phonemic awareness in episode 5, which is when we talked about the Big 5.
Yep.
The National Reading Panel and how it has identified the 5 big things that every reading program should have, or the things that science has shown is very vital to learning how to read. And phonemic awareness was the very first one.
So let's break it down. I'm one of those kiddos you have to be more patient with because the terms can get jumbled in my head. So let's talk about what phonemic awareness is.
Okay, so phonemic awareness can be confused with a couple of other important terms.
Yes.
The biggest one is phonics. And
Yep.
for me, like every time I might have heard phonemic awareness before a couple of years ago, I just assumed they were talking about phonics.
Same.
I just assumed it was interchangeable
Yep.
with phonics. But then when I saw the Big 5 and phonics is the second one, phonemic awareness is first and phonics is second, I was like, wait, aren't those the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
I had to dive in a little bit and find out what's the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. I think actually the National Reading Panel mentions this in a quote that I sent to you.
Yep, I'll go find it. But let's talk about what phonemic awareness is first.
Right, sorry, good point. So phonemic awareness is the hearing of the sounds in words. Phonics is once you take those sounds and connect them to letters.
Right. So phonics is visual.
Yes.
Right. And phonemic awareness.
Well, phonics is visual mixed with sound.
Okay, true. But you're connecting it with the letter.
Picture.
Yes,
Yes.
with the picture.
Yes.
Phonemic awareness, you don't need the picture.
Right.
It's
People
just,
say you can do it in the dark.
yes, you can do it in the dark. So can you give an example?
So if I said, tell me the sounds in cat.
Mhm.
T, that's phonemic awareness.
Yep.
You don't have to see the words. You don't have to see the letters. You're just being able to break those sounds apart.
Yep.
And for me, I've never known not knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
But once I learned about it, I started seeing it in my students all the time that couldn't do it.
Same.
Right.
And I don't even remember how I learned how to do that or if it was something that was automatic to me I have no recollection of how I learned.
For me, I mean, I've been
how to
teaching
do
for
that.
years.
Yeah.
And it was like 2021. So it's 2024 now, like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When I first realized the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. And I
Mhm.
realized, oh, before you can even teach them their sounds, because before that I was always like, they got to learn their sounds, they got to learn their letters. they need to be able to hear the sounds in a word. They need to be able to even know that that there's separate sounds.
Yep.
And I've also learned that there's been kids that they just hear it all like combined and never really understanding that there are separate sounds. They like hear the word cat and they just think that's one sound. And they hear the word dog and they think that's another sound.
Yeah.
But understanding that they're made up of sounds that are interchangeable.
And I think
really
that
make a difference.
I think that goes into the whole memorization, not necessarily a pandemic, for less of a better word, but when the whole memorization thing was pushed, where you just are going to show kids these flashcards and they're just going to memorize what these words are, and that's how they're going to learn to read. Right? It's one sound. Oh, that's cow, that's dog, that's cat. That's so from the National Reading Panel.
This is straight from the National Reading Panel report, which is like
hundreds of pages long. Yeah, hundreds of pages. So, if you're ever having a hard time going to sleep, this would be a great thing to print off and, read as a bedtime story. There are some gems,
though, so we'll just read you some gems.
Okay. Instruction in phonemic awareness, also known as PA, involves teaching children to focus on and manipulate phonemes in spoken syllables and words. PA instruction is frequently confused with phonics instruction, which entails teaching students how to use letter-sound relations to read or spell words. PA instruction qualifies as phonics instruction when it involves teaching children to blend or segment the sounds in words using letters. However, children may be taught to manipulate sounds in speech without any letters as well. This does not qualify as phonics instruction.
So hopefully we've clarified what phonemic awareness is compared to phonics, but a thing that often gets confused with phonemic awareness, and I literally see people use these terms interchangeably, is phonological awareness versus phonemic awareness.
Okay.
And I mean, even like books that I've used to teach phonemic awareness, I've seen using those terms.
Correlate
and so, but there is actually a slight difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness. Phonological awareness is a little bit bigger. It's the umbrella. It's the umbrella that covers a lot of different things, including phonemic awareness. So phonemic awareness is the individual sounds in words, or phonological awareness can include knowing how many words there are in a sentence.
Yeah.
So when you're learning a new language or you don't know a language, when you hear people talk, it's like just, you don't know where one word ends and the other word starts.
Right.
So being able to know where one word ends and the other word starts is phonological awareness. Also syllables, like breaking words into syllables.
Yeah.
That's a phonological awareness skill, but it's not phonemic awareness because it's not pulling out the individual phonemes. A phoneme, we should say that. Yeah. A phoneme is the very smallest unit of sound.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why phonemic awareness is pulling out the smallest unit of sound. Whereas phonological awareness, it can be anything having to do with sound. So also rhyming.
Yeah.
Rhyming is a phonological awareness skill that is important, but it's not necessarily phoneme unless you're just taking the first phoneme away and putting in another one.
Yeah, just
that's
replacing
that's an isolated
beginning sound, but that's isolation.
Right.
You just started reading this new book.
I did.
And it's right here.
Oh, right here.
Yep.
It's called Reading Above the Fray by Julia B. Lindsey. Okay. And it's a very good, simple book.
Yeah.
I actually haven't read the whole thing yet, but I just started reading it this week and I'm halfway through it. So it's pretty easy. This I thought was a really good chart to kind of show the difference between phonological and phonemic. If you can see that, it's a big circle with littler circles inside. So the biggest circle says awareness of words, then it says awareness of syllables, then awareness of rhymes, then awareness of onsets and rhymes, and then awareness of phonemes.
Yes.
So you can see the bigger thing gets down to the smaller awareness of phonemes is phonemic awareness.
Yes.
And then she also has a really great list of the different skills that for phonemic awareness and in their order of development. And I really like this because the first two that she includes are things that I hadn't thought of before I read this book.
Yeah.
So I love when I read something and I find, oh yeah, that's a great new thing. So the new thing she has in here is, it's not new, it's just a new way of organizing it in your mind.
Yes. So
first thing is hearing, like teaching kids to just hear the difference between individual sounds. Like, for example, hearing the difference between and you know, M and N. They're so similar.
Same with ba, d, and p.
or the vowel sounds.
The vowel sounds
are
are
huge,
and
right?
so important for
Yes.
reading. You have
And
to know
actually,
those,
we're going to
the
have an episode
differentiation.
soon about vowels.
Yes.
We're going to talk about vowels, a whole episode all by itself.
I love vowels.
But that's just hearing. And then the next one is generating, which is being able to say the sounds. Okay.
Another one is isolating that we've been talking about. So that's being able to tell a word and ask the child, okay, what's the beginning sound of that word?
Right.
For example, like bed. What's the beginning sound of bed? B. Very good. It's not the letter you're asking for. It's the sound that you're asking for.
But isolating doesn't just ask to isolate the beginning sound.
No, you can isolate the vowel sound. You can isolate the middle sound. You can also isolate the ending sound.
Yes. And those are harder skills.
Yes.
Most of the phonemic awareness apps that I found were just isolating the first sound.
Yeah.
And that's easier for kids. And maybe if I had looked into them further, there'd be further along skills of isolating other parts of the word. I don't know. But I just feel like it would be like, it would show a picture of something and the kids had to say the sound that it started with.
Yeah.
And that's very common.
Right.
But also important is being able to tell me what's the vowel sound in this word or what's the last sound in this word, and having the kids learn to distinguish that. So
yes.
That's important.
Very important. After isolating is blending, which is putting those individual phonemes, segmentations together to make a word, as in like dog, being able to go dog. Okay, what word did I say? Dog. Good. At, what word is that? Cat. So it's you segmenting to them and them being able to put it together.
Right, which we didn't talk about segmenting yet because that's the other one.
That's the other one.
Segmenting is the next one, and that's being able to break apart the sounds. And
yes.
And we like to have the kids tap it out, right? Yep. So if you say the word dog, it would go d-a-g, so that you're forcing them to hear all the sounds and break it apart. And for some kids, that's really hard.
It's amazing. Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's amazing to see how sometimes they'll just go dog.
The younger they are and doing these things with them, the better. And they're going to be able to become clear on that stuff. So.
Yeah. And the last one is probably one of my favorites. And you brought a cool activity to show for this, for manipulating. Yeah. So let's talk about manipulating first, and then I'll change the camera. So manipulating is adding, deleting, or substituting. Pretty much you're changing different phonemes in the word to make it into a new word.
Right.
Right. So from, I think the example in the book, hot to hat, right? What phoneme do you have to change to make hot into hat? Belle has this amazing activity that she does with some of her kiddos, and it has done wonders.
It really has
for
these kids.
And this is something that any teacher can easily create. It was not expensive.
Yep.
And any parent can do it as well.
So what I've created here is what some people call Elkanon boxes. And you can do them on paper, or you can do them on a whiteboard, you can do them wherever you want, but it just gives a box for each sound. So I've done it on a tray, a cookie sheet tray that's magnetic. And the reason I did that is because I want kids to be able to use magnets, because then they stay put and things don't slide around. So I've got magnets that are just on the side, just little round magnets to represent the sounds. And then I've also taken the letters and just made little cards with the letters. I just printed them out on cardstock and laminated them, and then I put a little magnet on the back so they'll stick also. Okay, so I made little scripts with different word chains on them. And so I call it with my kids, tap it, map it, graph it, change it. The first thing that we do, going along with what we've been talking about with phonemic awareness, is the hearing and knowing the sounds. I make sure that the kids know all the letter cards that we're using that day. They know the letter and what sound it makes. So we make sure of that. And then I say, okay, your first word is ant. Tap it. And then they take their fingers and they go, tap for each sound. And then map it, and they take the magnets, and I have a pink magnet for the vowel sounds and black for the other ones. So they put the pink one because the vowel sounds first in that one. Okay, so now they've mapped it, and then I say graph it, and that's when they take the graphemes, which is another word for the letters, and they have to match it. So this is so they find the letter that goes with and they place it there. And then and they might have to do this, right? They might have to redo the sounds. So then there they have it. And then they read the word ant. Then we're going to change it. So then I say, now you're going to change it to chant. So then they have to tap out chant. Ch, a, n, t. And then they have to figure out how to change it. So in this case, they actually have to move all the magnets and all the letters. And they figured out it's got a different beginning sound. And then they're going to add, they got to add a magnet to go with that first. And then they add the ch sound. And you notice I put the C and the H together because it only makes one sound. And they've learned that by this time, that the C and H together makes ch. So that has to be a separate card. So that's an important thing about these Elkanon boxes, is they're based on sounds, not letters. They're learning how to map out the sound and what letters or letter combinations go with the sound. Okay, so then after they do chant, I could do another one. I could say, okay, now change it to chat. So then they have to go ch, a, t, and they can see where it changes. They say, oh, we got to take the N out, right? And it's going to be hard for some of the kids to see this, and you might have to help them with it. And then you move these over, chat, okay? And then you can go from there. You can go change it from chat to bat, and from bat to pat. And then you can add the N back in and do pant, and so on and so forth. So you just keep playing this little game with them, and it just helps them to with their phonemic awareness. So hopefully that was helpful to seeing how you can do some of this mapping it out,
which is so important. And I think it's going to be so helpful. The cookie sheets you got at the dollar store, so it's very affordable, very easy to use, something you can easily do at home or at school.
The trickiest part actually is coming up with the word chains.
Yeah,
I started out small and then just typed them up, saved them, that kind of thing. So
maybe
something we can put out sometime.
Yeah, something we can get out there for you.
Yeah.
Let us know if that's something you'd be interested in.
Okay, so where were we? Did we mention yet the idea of not necessarily teaching phonemic awareness in isolation from the letters and sounds?
We haven't yet, and how important it is to do both together.
Right. That's something that I think that as you're going down this learning process, you figure out certain things and then you have to change it. And that's part of it, right? So when I first learned about phonemic awareness, I was like, I got to do this. And it was really kind of drilled into me that this is sounds only.
And you have
and
to do
I
it
was
in
like
the dark.
learning that, I was learning, that's the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. So then I started doing a lot of like phonemic awareness without the sounds and letters, thinking I can't use the sounds and letters. And then I felt like the kids I was spending that time on that were losing all the time of practicing the sounds and letters. And so I became conflicted until I started hearing people say, you can actually do them together. And it's still phonemic awareness. Just like I did on that tap it, map it. First, they tapped out the sounds. The first thing we did was hear the different phonemes. And then they were able to map it. And in this book, the Reading Above the Fray, she actually says this. I think I'll just read this straight from this because it's great. She says, is oral only a red herring, about the phonemic awareness? She says, once children are working with letters, they are better served by focusing on phonemic awareness practice that includes letters. Another way to say this is, once children know some sound spelling relationships, they should mostly be working with letters and sounds together.
Which I think is so important.
Yes.
Because you could even take it back to math, right? When you're teaching numbers, you teach not only what the number looks like, but that it also represents a quantity.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with letters and sounds.
Right. Doing it all together as much as possible, interleaving it. I think that's the word.
Interleaving
it.
It's a good word.
Yeah, it's a great word. Okay. I did want to mention Matt Burns because he was the first person I heard that from.
Yes.
That you should be doing the letters with the sounds, and I just want to give him credit for that. He is a professor at the University of Missouri. I heard him on Melissa and Lori Loves Literacy podcast, and I was like, So then what can you do at home? Well, we showed you the Elkanon boxes.
Yep.
What are some other things that parents can do?
You can just ask your child words and have them change words. You know?
Don't wait until you have
don't have to
trays
have
and letters and all that stuff. You don't have to have all that.
You don't have to have manipulatives. It can all be oral as well.
Especially when your kids are really young.
Yep. So you could just be like, hey, say cat. And they could repeat. Okay, great. Tell me the sounds in cat. Can you tap it out? And that'll take a minute for you to teach them because that's a fine motor skill, right? To be able to tap your things, right? And so great. What's that first sound you heard in cat? Very good. Hey, what happens if you say cat But you, instead of say right? So that would be manipulating that word. Right?
Yes.
Changing cat to mat.
And these things can be done on the fly.
On
You
the
know,
car.
like finding opportunities throughout the day in the car, wherever, to help them. Or even when they say words. Sometimes I think with little kids, when they say a word wrong, we think it's so cute that we don't correct them.
Yeah.
And we need to correct them. You know, we need to help them hear the sounds in the word. So like one example is when kids learn the ABC song.
Yeah.
And they get to that elemental P part. They think there's one
letter that says elemental P. Oh yeah,
elemental. Right. Helping them hear the sound even within that. Just as you hear your kids saying things, clarify the sounds for them so they can hear it. Rhyming books. So many, like the Dr. Seuss
books are amazing.
Are really great. And they're funny. Helping the kids to learn the rhyming and to hear the sounds.
Yeah.
They're so great. I remember when I was probably a teenager, I remember my mom one time saying, one of the best books out there for teaching kids to read is Hop on Pop.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, really? That seems kind of funny. But it's cute, it's
true.
funny, and it has all that rhyming stuff. It's just so great. And then also just introducing your kids to poetry.
Yeah.
And there's really fun, cute poetry that kids could, like Shel Silverstein.
Shel Silverstein's amazing. I love his books.
He has
I
a lot of great books. And he has another one that has a different phonemic awareness skill other than rhyming. It's Runny Babbit.
Oh yes, you use Runny Babbit all the time
in my class. Yes, Runny Babbit is where he changes the first letter. He manipulates the sounds. So instead of Bunny Rabbit, it's Runny Babbit, and everything in the town is like that. So he has every poem in there has them switched out. So I actually, this is really funny because I had a teacher's aide. Her name was Miss Coons.
Yes.
And so we were doing everybody's Runny Babbit name in the class. And when we did hers was Kiss Moons.
And we
thought that was so funny, right? But it's so fun for them to figure out what their Runny Babbit name is by taking the first letter of their first name and the first letter of their last name and trading them.
Yep.
And so you can do fun stuff like that, right?
Absolutely.
So what other ideas?
The apples and bananas song where you're changing the vowel sounds.
Oh, my
is a great one.
My students love that one.
My 2-year-old is doing that right now. It's one of her favorite, and she thinks it's so funny when you change it to,
like baninis.
Yes, baninis and ooples.
So what you do on that one is, how does the song go? We should share it.
I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas.
I think I do it a little bit different than that, but it's very similar.
Very similar.
And then you change the vowel sounds
to long E.
Long E, yeah.
I like to eat.
I do the
apples and bananas.
I do the whole thing. This is how I do it.
Okay.
It's a little different. It goes, eat. Okay. I like to eat. I like to eat grapes, apples, and bananas. This is how I've always done it.
Oh.
I like to eat. I like to eat grapes, apples, and bananas. And then when we change it, we change every single vowel in the whole sentence. So we say, I like to eat. I like to eat grapes, apples, and bananas.
Oh, yeah. No, we do.
So I guess you can do it however you want.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Oh, fun.
But recently I was working with a small group of like 3rd and 4th graders who are struggling readers. I do some separate work with kids that have dyslexia, and we had a little bit of time at the end, and I said, let's do do you guys know the apples and bananas thing? And they're like, that's like for babies. And I'm like, well, let's just do it. And we did it, and they especially grapes, apples, and bananas, they laughed, and then after that they wanted to do it every time I had extra time.
Isn't it funny? They
Even
tried to
though
be so cool.
That's for babies, right? So it can be for babies, and babies do love that.
Yeah.
But you can do it with older kids too, and they actually love it. See, I wrote down some other ideas. Oh, karate chop words. Do you ever do that?
Yeah. Well, I think we karate chop them different because I always karate chop the ending sound.
The way I do karate chopping with my students is I have them stand up and I say, okay, we're going to karate chop these words. And we karate chop the whole thing. Like, so if I say
each
at, they go, at, and they have so much fun because they're just like doing all their karate chops. They can use their legs or whatever, but they have to chop on each sound.
Yeah.
And they love it.
Oh, so fun.
It's fun.
So fun.
Yeah. They just chop up all their words.
I mean, and so that just goes to show you, there's no right or wrong way to do any of these games. You can come up with your own ideas. You can,
Right.
Change it to something that works for you or your own cohort of either students or children at home.
Right. One of my latest ones that I just started doing, just to change it up a little bit, was I have them hop every sound.
Oh, yeah.
So they stand behind their desk and they go, I'm just using a simple word, cat. So they go, cat. See, and some of them like hop bigger than others. So I tell them, you got to go. And then we do another word with the same amount of sounds, like, okay, now hop. And they go back. Okay, you should be back at your desk. So we're trying to control it that way. So just, that simple.
Yeah.
As simple as just, and I'm sure you guys have lots of ideas of how you can just make it fun.
Yep.
To be hearing the sounds and doing the sounds, but it's super important. Yep. Is there anything else that we want to say about phonemic awareness?
No, I think we covered a lot.
I think we covered a lot. I think we did it. Please let us know if you have questions or ideas, and email us with your suggestions, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, for episode 8.
Yep.
Episode 8.
What's episode 8 about? It is going to be about letters and sounds. So basically the next step up, phonemic awareness, and then phonics.
Here we go.
Letters and sounds.
Can't wait to see ya.
See you then.